Welcome, everybody, to Crunch Time with Jeff, Booner, Lukas, and Gentry. It is Thursday, June 27th, and we're a day removed from the NBA draft. Me and Booner, we got back from the Rocket Mortgage Classic. We were hanging out with Doc, which he'll be joining
Shout out to Doc
today. So, hey, it'll be a good one, boys. How we feeling? How we feeling on a Thursday?
I'm red.
Very fine Thursday.
I'm red.
Feel good.
Fine Thursday. Booner, you got a little burn.
Yeah, Boone, you look a little burnt, baby. Got a little color, huh?
Not at all.
Then what's going on there? There's something.
Yeah, I got burnt. I got burnt. I got burnt.
You didn't feel like wearing a hat?
No, not
hat?
today. No hat
Judgment
today.
call. It's all right. We'll learn from it.
Yep, I wore a hat. I wore a hat out there, so I don't know if that maybe helped out, but I feel good. I don't know where Booner. He didn't look burnt when we were there, so I don't know what happened.
Dude, I didn't look burnt for the last hour. I just randomly get home and just all of a sudden I get inside and my face just started turning red. It was like I get out of the sun and I don't know. It's like an allergic reaction. I don't know what's going on. I might have to go to the hospital mid-show. I have no clue what's going on with my face right now.
You'll be all right, and you're gonna turn tan now, Booner.
Yeah, I'm gonna look great. I'm gonna look like Ryan Reynolds or something in another day or so. But
Ryan Reynolds.
It's just
not a
it's
manifested, Boone. Speaking into existence.
That's fair.
But overall, how was your guys' day there? What were some cool takeaways? Jeff, obviously, Jeff's a student of the game now. We call him. He's a big golfer now. So.
Yeah,
how was it?
It was you and Booner have been very important to my development. I've been in the G League, getting some work in, becoming a better golfer, understanding the game, becoming a student of the game. And I think, I've been to the Rocket Mortgage Classic a couple times, but I wasn't in golf. So, I'm out there just watching, enjoying the experience. Today with Booner, a lot more dialed in, Mike. A lot more dialed in. Understanding what's going on, it being even more, honestly, taking in how impressive, really how impressive these guys are. I mean, I guess the competition isn't what it used to be given, the LIV and the PGA, but still, these guys are top of their craft. So it was awesome. I had a blast. Who at the end of the day, Boone, who's in the lead? That I didn't look. I don't know.
They were still going when we left. I can check here real quick what happened while we were driving home. It's a good tournament though. If you haven't gone before, it's fun out there. We were just walking around. We were walking around with the Doc, who's going to be on today for probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours, just walking around, watching some of these golfers. Ricky Fowler 6 under, Zalatoris 6 under. They're 2 back of the lead though, so. It's a good tournament. There's some big names. There's not as many big names as there has been in the past, but there's still a couple big names out there. It's a good tournament to go to.
And Jeff, before the show, you mentioned the aura around Ricky Fowler. Can you speak more on that? And just what it was like watching Ricky work?
That's a great question. Great
question. I think the aura has a lot of it has to do with the stash. I noticed this is a trend, and notice how one of us has a stash, and that person is the best golfer out of the group. So I don't know. That's something I'm going to have to do some more research on, how having a stash translates into your golfing skill. But yeah, Ricky, he just immaculate, man. He's got the flow. He's just locked in, dialed in. There was moments where there's 100, 200 people watching this man. That's how golf is. I can't imagine what it was like, or what it is like, or what it was like when Tiger was at the peak of his game. Like how many people were just watching this man golf. I'm already bad at golf. I can't imagine 200-300 people just staring at me, and it's you can't hear anything. It's just watching you drive. No. It's impressive. I actually gain a lot of respect for how hard the sport is and what these guys are doing. It's actually, and it's it's in Detroit, which that's awesome too. Detroit Golf Club. It's great. Never played it, so hopefully in the future maybe we can all play it. The Crunch Time guys can go out there and play as a foursome, but. Yeah, Ricky Fowler, man, got the aura. It's in the stash, I believe.
That's fair. It does help.
I believe it's in the stash. I'm not kidding. I told Booner that. I said, why does everyone have a stash here? I don't understand. Like 70% of the men just had a stash. I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about just walking around. Everyone had a stash.
Everyone knows.
Just staring at people, staring at guys' stashes.
I don't
unbelievable.
it's
Jeff was rating the stashes. Jeff probably had a great time. Great time.
Colt or something. Like if you play golf, you have to have a stash if you're good. It's just like a
no, not necessarily. There's a lot of good golfers.
I don't know,
but I get what you're saying. It is the craziest thing. I mean, I'm a good, decent golfer, but like having all those people watching you and it being, like pitch quiet and oh man, the pressure would add up. I definitely couldn't do it. I've never golfed in like a serious situation like that. I've done many outings, but like that, and those players are different, man. Like
I would shank every shot if I was playing around those, and like the shots that they hit are just like they could be under a tree behind like 6 trees and like still get it on the green. And for me, it's like I'm probably hitting 10 shots up to the green at that point, and they just hit it one shot 250 yards through trees. It's an unbelievable. I'm telling you, dude, if like there's people out there who haven't gone and can go this weekend, like just go watch. It's like a good time out. I can't wait to go back.
I got a ticket for like $60. With fees, it was like 80, but like to go spend all day there, like it was to me, it was worth it. I see Wheezy D says, all right, now Jeff, with the research you've done, have you done the 180 yet? Are you referring to Ron Holland? Is that I'm assuming the research, or have you done a 180 with Ron Holland? I don't know. I mean, I was pretty positive. I only one really positive last night. So would a 180 mean I'm now like
negative? Are you all in?
I mean, I like the pick. I said it yesterday. I'm cool with the pick. Where are you guys at? The day after. I don't know if anything changed for you guys.
For me, it's one of those things where immediately, like, I'm not going to change my stance on they should have won somebody that could shoot the ball. But at this point, Trajan still has a lot to do with the roster. So I think just there's a lot more to see, and especially with how young he is, and you talked about all the intangibles he does bring. You got to fix his shot, but that's something that they could possibly do. I know Jaylen Brown, when he was drafted, I believe, 3rd overall, like he couldn't shoot to save his fucking life coming out of Cal. And now you look at him, he's a player that can really do it all. So that's what you're hoping for. I don't know if that's what he's going to be, but it's not something that I hate, but I'm still not in love with the pick either.
Yeah, I would agree. And obviously we pray he becomes a better shooter, but I kind of slept on the pick a little bit. And I still think there's many moves that will still be done to this roster that need to be made in order for him to get like the proper minutes that he needs to develop. So once those moves are made and there's a little roster construction, I might feel a little bit better about it, but like the fit still isn't there. We needed a shooter. Obviously he can't do that. We're going to hope he develops into that. But I think if there's roster moves that are kind of made around this draft pick, it may not be so bad. I don't really hate the player. I just kind of hate more of the fit, and I wish we would have gotten a better shooter. That's really what it was.
Yeah, I mean, fellas, at the end of the day, like last night when we reacted to it, the reaction wasn't – I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't the best. I think everyone as a Pistons fan in the kind of circle here wanted to get a shooter. Like for me, I keep saying, you need to get someone to complement your star players. Like that's the most important part. Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, how can you complement them? But what people need to realize, and this is kind of where where I came around today was, and what we all need to kind of wrap our heads around is this is again for the 6th time under Tom Gores, it's a new regime that's coming in, and you know, Trajan Langdon he's a new GM. Like these players that are on this team and roster right now weren't drafted by him. And so now he's coming into this situation, and whether he hires a new GM or gets someone to help him kind of with that role and a coach, he was going to bring his guy in no matter what, whether it was, you know, a shooter, a playmaker, he really didn't care. Like Jeff, you said it yesterday a lot. He doesn't really care who's on the roster. He's not attached to anyone. He doesn't care about anyone. Like obviously it comes in the roster. It's his, obviously it's like, you know, those are his players now, but like he has no attachment to these guys. And when a new regime comes in, and as much as we hate it because we've gone through so many under Tom Gores, he's going to come in and make his own roster, and he's going to do his own thing, and he's going to make sure, because he's not going to just do what's already here and fail and let his job fail because of what the players were before. So he was going to go out and get his guys no matter what. Ron Holland, to me, and if you heard Trajan, I think we're going to listen to some of the interview today. Trajan came out and said, like, he's a high character guy. He gets in the gym all the time. I love his work ethic. To me, that resembles what Trajan's talking about there. that sounds like what Brad Holmes kind of did with the Lions, to where he came in and said, I don't really care position-wise or anything. Like Penei Sewell. I'm going Penei Sewell. Jeff, we talked about it this morning when we were going to the Classic. Like, he just went and got Penei Sewell, the best player, and with the highest character. He didn't care about anything else. So that seems like what the pick is. Now, if he does get a shot, I mean, this kid's going to be really, really good. He's 18 years old, so he has such a high ceiling going forward. But it comes down to, can he shoot? Can he end up finding a shot from now in the next 2 or 3 years? If he does that, this whole roster, because Cade's going to get better, Jay Ivy's going to get better, all these guys are going to get better. It's going to be a scary roster in the next 2 or 3 years, eventually. It's just about the development of them. If they can find a way to develop these guys, the athleticism and the potential and the work ethic, that's kind of what you look at, all those intangibles, and they do have them. That's why I'm a little optimistic more like 24 hours later.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about doing this is when we do these watch parties, everything's live. So, everything's live. So we're reacting live. So if it's a pick that we didn't necessarily expect, then yeah, we're gonna be like, oh. But that's why it's important to have these day afters. I mean, I liked the pick when it was announced, because I knew who Ron Holland was. Now we all agreed that, shooting was something that we all agreed should have been factored in. But when you look at a team that's won 14 games, I also understand the argument of, like, you can't draft for fit when you stink. Like, you have to you have to have great players. And with this new ruling, or the changes now in the NBA with the first and second apron, they're trying to incentivize teams to draft and develop. So if you can draft and develop, you're going to draft the best players. And I think Ron Holland was one of the best players in this draft. I didn't know the Pistons loved him, but hey, I saw this graphic yesterday, and actually Anthony sent me this Pistons talk, and I thought it was very interesting. But it compares other prospects that came out and what they shot. And here I'll put this out, but it's just something that's interesting. Again, take this with a grain of salt, but it's just in comparison how other guys have developed. Right, Jaylen Brown, Mikal Bridges, the other two, and you look at their 3-point percentage. Now Holland shot the worst.
I mean, that's a really big difference. I don't see why this graphic makes sense.
But he was again, it's in more. If you look at statistically, he was a better player just coming out at his age. But again, it's Mikal was playing for Villanova, and Jaylen Brown played for Cal. So it's just how you measure it. Do you value playing against grown men? I basically, this graphic is to understand that just because of who he is now isn't a complete product. Like, he's still going to grow as a shooter. Are we
going to address that? Am I the only one that's like, hey, that 3-point percentage
5%?
Like that, we're not talking about it's like 1% off. Like that was a difference there.
Yeah, and both of those guys,
compared to the fact that he also was the highest scorer out of them. He averaged 19. He had a higher field goal percentage than Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown was like 43%. So there's going to be lows to his game, but there's also things that he does better than those guys.
I do think with Ron Holland and the positives we could take away, like literally the only bad part about his game is his shot. Like, I would say this, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because maybe I am, but if Ron Holland had a shot, like a legit 3-point shot, and shot, let's say in the G League last year, he shot 33% from 3 and he was knocking down threes, or 34%, he probably wasn't going to fall to the 5th spot. Am I wrong? Like, if you watch his film,
and also the G League, by the way, it's NBA 3-point line. That's important.
Well, yeah, but college is essentially NBA almost now too. So that doesn't really.
It is, but it is bigger. I mean, it's not the same. That's the point.
But like, to my point though, is like, I do think that if he did just have a shot, he's probably a top 3 pick in this draft. Like, he is extremely athletic. He could defend at the highest of levels, and like he can handle the rock as well at his size. Like, you're like, okay, this guy has a massive ceiling. But it's just like the only negative about his whole game is he shoots 24% from 3. So that is a problem. But like, if you take that away, you're like, let's say that's at 35. That's like a hell of a player to have on your roster. Like, he is going to be extreme. Like, that's all-star potential in my eyes.
Where do you guys think, just because I feel like him and Asar are constantly going to be fighting for playing time, where do you think those two ceilings relate to each other? And being that Trajan, obviously Asar's not his guy, do you think that kind of by default will put Asar as far as long term, his days are kind of numbered. Like obviously he's going to hang around here, develop, but I feel like you can't mesh both of them at the same time and expect them to hit their ceilings and what you want with them.
And
Depends on who they hire at coach too.
I kind of agree though, but I think Holland probably has a higher offensive ceiling, obviously, than Azor, and Azor's shooting really didn't improve that much last year. But hopefully, with the new shooting coach, that goes better. But I don't know.
I do think. What do you guys thought? Because like, look at the Celtics team that just won. I think there's like a sense of like those guys could even play on the floor at the same time, because like in my eyes, it's you're just getting the best defenders out there, and if they could somehow find a way to like, if one of them, I can't remember who I was telling this, but like if one of them finds a shot, you can work with it. It's like on the Celtics, they have like Jaylen Brown, who's an elite defender. You also have Drew Holiday, who's an elite defender. You have Derek White, elite defender, and yeah, like Derek White is a knockdown shot, but like, there's going to be teams out there who, like, if you could find that many elite defenders and then just find a role on the offense for him, like an Asar, like if Asar ends up getting just a little bit of a shot and like finds his offense a little bit, I think like both of those guys are on the floor at the same time. It's like the Celtics, like you just have 4 or 5 guys on the floor at once that are very, very elite defenders. And like, you're going to like, that's a tough, Cade can guard, like that's a tough team to play against.
Yeah. In 2024, you're going to play those guys both at the same time. Not initially, though, but long-term, yeah, your goal, you could play either one. And nowadays, I think we have in our head power forward, small forward. It's positionless basketball. You just want basketball players, and it's versatility. Bigger the player, the better. And they're both, 6'7", 6'8". They can both play both forward spots and be fine. Now,
so you think
them on the court together right away, I don't know. I think Holland, one of them is going to come off the bench. I don't know if they'll play right away, but in the next year or two, when they do develop a shot, that's the plan. Then, yeah, I can see them playing together. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I do feel like down the line, like when you're looking at the future of this team, when I was driving home today, I was thinking about like the future of the Pistons team. And like when you do compare to like the Celtics, how like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum took a little while to kind of develop together until they actually became good. I kind of look at that with the Ron Holland and Cade Cunningham and hopefully Jay Ivey and Asar, to where it sucks for people now because we've been bad for so long, but give it 2 or 3 years. And I truly do think like some of these young guys can turn into really good players in the league. It's just like you have to let some guys like develop and get older. Like these are young players. A lot of people want to like go at Cade, and some people, that we know go at Cade, and it's like, oh, he can't be a star in this league. He can't be a number 2 option. Okay, let him become an adult in this league. Let him kind of take 2 or 3 years in this league and develop. Because if you go look at every star besides like Luka and LeBron and like a couple other players, it took them 3 or 4 years to even get on it, like for their team to start winning and actually put numbers up. Go look at all those stats, like Jamal Murray in Denver. Like all of these guys take Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Like it took 2 or 3 years for them to develop together and kind of take that step. So I think once now they have this core, I do think, I don't know. This is in my brain when I was driving today. In my head, I'm like, I can see this young core like actually being a legit young core if it works out.
Oh, hold on.
I could, like, I can.
Into what measurement though?
Well, like in the past Pistons teams, they just got like again, and I talked about this like Tobias signing. They just got like random vet signings and like an Andre Drummond and Greg Monroe, and like these aren't good play. This isn't like a good core. This Pistons like young core, it's like legit like Cade Cunningham, who's a legit like could be a 1-2 in my opinion in this league. A Jay Ivey, I still have hope for him. And by the way, like Ryan said, Booner switching up. I'm not switching up. Yesterday, all I said was I want shooters. That's all. I want a shooter. But when you do look at the young core and the ceiling of Ron Holland, some of these players, it does make sense to where if they develop correctly together, these guys are some of the best at their position as they've been coming up in the ranks. So you have to let them develop and become like legit players in the NBA, get used to get their feet wet, play together. Like it takes a couple of years in the NBA. It's not a league where you're just like, boom, we're good.
Well, Mike, I want your reaction to what he said real quick. We agree that shooting is a need. We also can agree that this team couldn't stop a nosebleed last year. So defense, they do need defensive players. That's why we were so high on trying to get OG. He can shoot though, But my point is what he can do defensively. To us, it was like enticing because they need that. Like, I think when you talk about need, they didn't address the shooting with the 5th overall pick, but they addressed a need, and they need to defend. Like, they can't stop anybody. So I get that. But Mike, hey, he's maybe Booner. Where are you at, Mike?
No, I mean,
what's going on?
I do have some confidence in some of these guys, but like I've been saying, I do think there's still moves to be made, and you're not going to go into the season with this whole young core. And I think the roster will be cleared up so guys like Holland and Azor can develop. I don't know if Ivy and Stu are going to be the guys that are gone, but I do think those two are leading those candidates to be moved rather. And I still think there's going to be some shaked up in this young core. But to Booner's point, I have more confidence in this young core than a lot of past drafts and a lot of past young cores that we've built up. So I do agree with him on that extent, but I still think there's got to be a couple guys moved out of here. The roster still just doesn't make sense, and you're not going to be able to get all these guys playing time.
Well, this comment I do agree with, and this is why we argued about the 5th pick. Is I understand the Dalton Connect love, and our biggest thing is I wanted to trade back for Dalton Connect, but you do understand this comment. Can we agree? You don't just simply draft shooting at 5. Yeah. You have to factor in. Like for me, it wasn't. It was shooting has to be factored in, but the player with the highest upside. And if Trajan felt like, well, any of these guys that can shoot don't have as high of upside as this guy, it's like, okay, well then you got to go with that. When you draft in the top 5. You got to get somebody with a high ceiling, like it's just how it works. And
yeah, it felt it was a little different this year because the draft board was a little different from years past.
Yeah,
like it wasn't like a top heavy draft. There wasn't a lot of great players, but then when you get to that point in the draft where you're like, all right, there's not that many high end guys as there is in the past. It's like, all right, what are our needs on our team? Can we draft for our needs? That's how I look at it essentially.
Yeah, well, Trajan explained how he was thinking. I want to give credit to Zarek and Bully Ball for this footage. I want to play some of what Trajan talked about because he had a couple key things. It's 10 minutes. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. We're going to listen to part of it. So let's play this clip. Again, this is from Zarek, who does a great job, and he does great things over at Bully Ball, which you guys can check out on Twitter at Real Bully Ball. But let's play Trajan Langdon speaking to the media right after they took Ron Holland and see what he had to say.
He didn't work out with you guys and didn't have much communication. Was that a product of all the last few weeks, or what do you like about it?
Well, first of all, I'll start out with what I like about the young man. Obviously, a high character human being. Works his butt off. We did a really deep dive over the past few days, past several days on Ron, just understanding, the compete level on human being. Talked to several of his teammates and understood the care factor, the work ethic. Talked to John Jenkins, a teammate of his, who he got up with every day to shoot with at 7 a.m. Kind of mentored him, but also he was somebody who was trying to mentor some younger players on the team as well. So he has the leadership piece to him. He has the high compete level piece to him, and then he has the winner piece to him. That's what he wants to do. And obviously they didn't do much winning this year. But I think it really frustrated him. And I also know that that's one thing he's coming here to do, is coming here to help us win. So all those characteristics were very attractive to us at this time. And as for not bringing him in, there was a lot of agents that didn't want to send their players here, so we didn't see actually that many players. And then at the end of the day, staying quiet was a strategy. Yeah.
Overall, talk about the draft last Friday, but just what boxes did you
That man is exhausted.
I was gonna say that.
a player that really made Ron Holland the player you wanted to select tonight?
I think he's again high level high compete level. I think he's got one of the biggest upsides in the draft. Obviously, everybody knows that shooting is an issue, but I think for a lot of players that had high upside in this draft, shooting was an issue. We hired Fred Vinson for a reason, so we can take chances like this on young players with high when shooting is the piece. And if his shot hits, he's going to be a really, really good player. The kid works. The kid competes. He's got great size for position. Just think everything that we looked at across the board, he just checked a lot of boxes except for shooting. I think it's really hard to find a player of that age, compete level, have the productivity or G League that he had at 18 years old. I think he's just going to bring a competitive edge to this team going forward, and I think it'll be the type of player that this city, can back and wrap their arms around.
Okay, well, there's some of the clip there, him explaining the pick, what he liked about Ron Holland. Yeah, he working OT.
He was falling asleep.
He looked dead.
Not to get confused with Troy Weaver, the Sleepy Weaver comments. I think this man was he
actually exhausted.
Yeah, yeah.
He's been playing every role in this organization. Like literally, they don't have a GM or a coach. He been hiring on everything.
He's been helping out, hiring front office people, looking for a head coach, scouting in the draft, trying to find out what the hell's on his roster. I mean, I can't imagine doing the press conference last week. So yeah, there was a lot going on there. But to his point, he brought up the shooting thing because he understands, and he said, with all the qualities he liked in Ron Holland, the shooting obviously is one thing that he has to work on. But that's why they brought in Fred Vincent. Speaking of OT, Fred Vincent's gonna have a lot of OT this. Yeah, he's gonna be working on some shots. But that's why you get him.
Can I say too real quick, fellas? Like, I don't know how you guys took the Trajan Langdon conversation there. I just keep getting the feeling, and I don't want to like get myself too excited. I like Trajan Langdon. I don't want to like fall for this man, and then he disappoints me the next 2 or 3 years. I think I'm all in on this guy already. Like, he sounds like Brad Holmes. Am I wrong? Like, he's like, we just want like high character guys who just work hard, who want to win, and like that's all we care about. Like I just get a Brad Holmes vibe, and I don't know if that's just like being biased because we're in Detroit, but I just get a little bit of that type of vibe to where it's like he just wants to build like a team the correct way and like an organization the correct way instead of like shortcuts and let's try and do that. Like, it just feels like he's all in on building it his way, and he's not going to let anyone get in his path of it. Like, I want the right character guys in my building, and that's it. And like they'll lead to winning. That's what this pick feels like. You guys know what I mean? Like, does anyone else get that feeling?
I think just there's a sense of realness about him, because I obviously don't know that much about Trajan Langdon, but just from hearing what I have, there's a sense of, okay, I know what the Detroit Pistons are right now. I understand that they are probably by far the worst current NBA franchise as far as it stands in 2024. And there's a lot of work to be done here. And it's going to be a long time for it to come to fruition of what I want to work. But this is what it is. I do think there's a sense of realness with him.
Yeah, I think he's very aware of the situation. And I like that he kind of got out ahead of obviously his draft pick and said the reasoning behind it. He didn't just come up there and say he's Holly Berry and some dumb shit like that. So I like that he's aware, and I like that he's very well spoken, and he seems to have a grasp on the situation ahead of him. So I do, as it's very early, obviously, in his tenure, but I do have high hopes for him as well.
Wow. This is incredible.
I hope.
I do.
My hopes have been shot down a lot.
This is where
you're vulnerable, Mike. You guys are vulnerable. So I get that. It's like you had your heart broken, and now it's like easy to get you back. You're just looking for love, and this is Trajan Langdon.
I don't know if it's like that, but it's like, dude,
love.
This feels like the most competent front office person, someone that we've had in the last 12 years. Yeah. And it's like, he's not our GM. He's a president of basketball operations. He was a GM for a legit organization that turned things around for the last 4 years in New Orleans. So it's like, we actually have someone who knows what, like, a proven record. Like, no offense to Troy Weaver. Like, he was an assistant GM in the Thunder. He did help draft a lot of those guys, but did he help build the team and actually get them to where they are today? No, he didn't. Like, he just was really good at drafting. Trajan Langdon took a team that was very young in New Orleans and flipped them around to a team that was in the playoffs every single year. And like, yeah, they didn't compete for a championship, but they were still playing in the playoffs like that quick. So
yeah, he's competent, and it's nice to see. And what you were saying about Brad Holmes, you're not saying I get what you're saying, because people are gonna be like, well, he's not. How could you say that? I guess it's what he looks for in players We're not talking about can he hit at the rate of Brad Holmes. No one's saying that. But in terms of what he looks for, upside, character, like all the things, and honestly, the type of player Ron Holland is, it does give a resemblance of kind of what Trajan liked when he was with New Orleans, that type of player. Wings. Wings are very important. You just saw the Boston Celtics, what they did with 2 wings going at it for the MVP trophy. So it's a big part of what the Pistons need. I mean, they need wings. They need good wings, great wings. And they have 2 young guys that are very athletic and I think could cause havoc defensively immediately. Now, offensively, that'll take some time. But hey, they stink this year, boys. You got Cooper Flagg coming out next year, and he is a tank for Cooper Flagg. No, I'm just kidding. They actually tried to win some games, but hey, we'll see. They got Trajan Langdon. I would assume at his first draft, at least at this point, I can say this confidently, better than that initial draft by Troy Weaver. All right. I think that we can say that. Killian Hayes, I saw some comments, this is Killian Hayes. No, I don't know.
That's bad.
His pedigree, Ron Holland's pedigree, doesn't even compare. It's so much more than what Killian Hayes had coming out. It's not the same. So I think this will be a very, very, we're gonna look back and be like, he had a great first draft. Now he easy. A great man once said, "Wings win you rings." Yeah, I mean they definitely help. You need wings. I mean, look at the best players in the league. You got to be able to go. I mean, especially in the East. I mean, you have Giannis, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. So yeah, I definitely wings are important, and that's what Trajan Langdon I think understands too. There was a comment today that they look for that prototype of player that Ron Holland is, and it's a good thing. They also drafted today another player.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yep, they drafted another player, and that player is Bobby Klintman. When they traded with Minnesota, took on Wendell Carter Jr. Or Wendell Moore, excuse me, Wendell Moore, and they basically moved up in the draft, and they selected Bobby Klintman, who played 37th overall. Played for the Taipans, I believe it is.
Carnes Taipans.
Australia.
Yeah, Taipans. Played a part. It was a part of Australia's NBL league. Next Stars program, I guess I should say. I don't think it was the NBL, but regardless.
It was in the NBL. It was?
Okay.
Yes.
He averaged 9.7 points, 5 rebounds in 21 minutes while shooting 35.7% from 3. I think it was in 2 attempts, Booner. I think it was.
Just over 2 a game. Yep.
Yeah. So, and he's like 6'9", so he's a bigger guy. I don't mind that, but those picks are kind of just he's second round pick. You're just kind of swinging. You're taking guys that you think could be good players. So I don't have much to add there. I don't know Bobby. I can't give you a breakdown of Bobby Klintman, but
I do have something, boys, for this. Actually, I reached out to. It's in Australia. You boys know I have Australia connections. Oh, I've got the connections in the NBL, and I reached out to one of my friends there and his brother. So the Next Stars NBA, like the whole process they have over there, that is the NBL. Just these young players. They had 8 players last year that were Next Stars, and one of my friend's little brothers plays in it. So I messaged him. I said, "Hey, what do you know about this Bobby kid? Like, give me an idea." He messaged me back literally like 2 minutes ago, and he said he was in the Next Star program, and he actually messaged. And I want you guys to keep this in mind. Like, keep this in mind. Alex Sarr, who went number 2 overall, he was in this Next Star program, and he played over there as well. And the message I got from my friend, which again, his little brother is one of the 8 players in this Next Star program, he mentioned that Bobby is potentially, or arguably, he said, the best next star player in the NBL. So out of all the 8 of those players, he probably was, you could argue he was the best out of all 8 of those guys, including Alex Sarr. And the thing was too, like with that, was he says he's athletic, he can shoot. He said he can shoot. You guys hear me, boys? Huh?
35%.
He can shoot and he can defend. So he can do all 3. And out of all of those players, he was literally arguably the best NBL Next Star player, including Alex Sarr. The only thing that he said was, and I could put this here. He said his team was much worse, so he played a bigger role than Sarr did. So that's the only thing you could take away from that. But he's like a legit player. Getting him in the second round, I feel like is an absolute steal, to be honest. To be able to do that and kind of get him through a second round pick, that it seems like a steal. And as well as the Pistons did move up for Bobby. It wasn't like they just sat back at 50 something. They moved all the way up to 35, 36 because they wanted this kid. I think he's going to be like a good role player for this team eventually in the future. Like, I don't think people understand, like, playing in the NBL Next Stars program. That is like, there are players in the NBA who go and play in the NBL. Like that don't make it, but they go play in there at 18 years old. If you're playing in the NBL, that means you're legit. Like you're playing at a higher level than college basketball at that point. The NBL is higher than that. So this kid is legit. So I'm a big fan of him. If he can shoot, if he can just kind of get his feet wet in the NBA and get a feel for the game, I think he's going to be really good. Actually, I think that's a steal. Shout out Trajan for getting that pick.
Didn't we have another draft pick, or was that it?
That was it.
No, they traded it away to Memphis, I want to say.
Could be wrong. Well, just to give add to more context, and that's great stuff, Booner, by the way.
Good job,
I want to add something with Bobby. And this is an NBL.com. They have like kind of profiles for players. Scouts had Bobby Klintman as a mid first to late first pick. So he was projected first round. He was a projected first round pick, and he fell. So, there's if that means anything to you as well. I know projections are, some people value it, some people don't, but projected to be a mid to late first round pick. Pistons got him in the second. So I think it's good value. So I'm interested to see how that pans out. And he could shoot, big guy, 6'9", I think he was. So yeah, I think this draft, it's going to be a way better draft than Troy Weaver had his first year. I think I'm confident. I can say that right now. I think for the value, Ron Holland has more upside than Killian Hayes will ever have. I mean, it's just the facts. So, and better pedigree. So
that sucks to think that.
What?
That Troy Weaver had 3 picks and all of the players that were in that draft, and he, like, this draft, which was supposed to be one of the worst drafts in the last 15 years, that there's better. Trajan Langdon in year one's getting better value than Troy Weaver could in that draft class. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, apparently his hands were tied. Apparently.
Yeah.
So rumors say.
I heard.
Did you hear, Jeff?
I think I can say this. I heard this, and I don't think I've ever brought this up before. And I'm not going to say who told me because I don't think I'm supposed to say it, but fuck it, I'm saying it anyway. So I was told that Troy Weaver said he didn't think that Tyrese Halliburton, and I think it was Troy. I don't think it was Dwayne. I think it was Troy. Said that he didn't think Tyrese Halliburton had that dog in him.
Oh my God.
That it factor.
Yeah, like it was something corny like that. Like he doesn't have that fire. You know what? If that makes any sense. And I'm not gonna say you said it because I don't want to piss this person off, but someone who's pretty well connected. And that was probably like what?
I feel like I can guess.
That was last year, actually. So when I heard that, I go, "Oh gosh, this is why." And then it turns out it was the complete opposite. Killian Hayes actually had no dog in him at all, no fire. So it was actually the opposite.
Not even a whimper.
Yeah,
so what we're saying is Troy Weaver does not have that dog in him. He cannot tell who has the dog. Like, that's unbelievable.
That's a good point, Boone.
Go grab the jersey, Jeff.
Burn it.
We need to burn that for content.
Yeah.
Just at the bare minimum. Doesn't have to be in the room. We can burn it on the court.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it when I heard that. I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." He thought defensively that he wasn't as intent. Like he wasn't. But look at Tyrese now. He's like a really good defender. So it's just like that's how people throw around these buzzwords like dog in them and like, dude, just take the best player. I mean, stop overthinking it. Like,
can I ask a serious question here? This is a serious question when it comes to drafting prospects.
What's up?
Do you guys, because Tyrese Halliburton, him coming out of the draft, what he was really good at was offensively. Like he was a good ball handler. He was a great point guard. He could score. We know now he could score the rock. Is it easier in today's NBA because of the way it is? It's a scoring league to draft offensively and teach defense than it is to draft defense and teach a shot in offense.
As far as getting like a lockdown guy, or just be able to catch up and play defense and handle
But
your own?
basically
I
that,
think
because to me it feels like I could teach you how to play defense. We can get you bigger. We can get you in the weight room and teach you how to play defense. But if, like, again, to my point, if you just can't score and you don't have a shot, you're probably not going to last in the league.
Yeah, I think offensively with basketball is such like a skill thing. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of guys, not a lot of guys, because at the NBA level it's difficult to do. But I think it's easier to get in position and play defense than it is to go off the dribble and make a three-pointer if you don't already have that in your game, because it takes so much more than just, obviously with defense it does as well, but it's really just being in the right spot at the right times and obviously being strong enough to defend whoever you're guarding.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, I would say defense is probably more coachable because, I don't know, some offensive players can go their whole career working on something and still never really excel at it. And then sometimes you can just get a defensive coach that kind of just coaches you up and brings that dog out of you defensively. And I don't know, that's just my opinion. I would say defense, but they're both pretty tough to do when a player is really bad at either or of them.
That's so. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'll add this. I
I
think
would say defense.
I think with the league we're in currently, it's offense is easier to come by than it was before, ever. So I think given that, guys that are very good defenders are valued a lot more, because I think defense is a mindset, like you guys said, but it's also hard. You either have it or you don't. You have to have that fire to be like, I want to lock this guy in front of me down. Like, I take pride in that. And it seems like no one takes pride in it in today's NBA. It's just like, and the Celtics were really good defensively, but in general in the NBA, and it's just not as prioritized. So, I think offense, yeah, it's going to be valued, but man, if a guy can defend like a very good defender, even if he's a little bit of a project offensively or he doesn't have all the tools, I think he still goes high because of like how much that's valued. Like, you got to be able to, there's so many good offensive players now. Like, you need a way to stop these guys, or not stop them, but slow them down. It's just, it's kind of like the NFL in a way, like lockdown corners, like anything. If you can stop these offenses, it's like prioritized. It's like, we got to find a way to slow this down. It's kind of what the NBA has become, in my opinion, a little bit.
I do see, that's where I'm a little, I guess on the opposite side and disagree a little bit, to where I just think like there is a lot of people who could score the rock now, but the guys that could do it at a higher level, that's where you're like, if you can find a guy who could score and shoot the rock at a very high level, you can figure out the defensive, like the Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton was not a great defender, and he'll even probably admit it to you now. I think he actually said it a couple of weeks ago in an interview, saying that he's still trying to figure out and learn how to defend in the NBA, and that's kind of one of the things that he needs to get better at. But I just think like offensively is like the number one thing now in the NBA, and yeah, there's a lot of guys that can do it, but at a high level, no. Like not at the highest level. So I do think it's, I don't know, just in my mind, it's maybe the Pistons the last 4 or 5 years have been looking at it the wrong way. And they're going after, well, let's just get a defensive team and we can lock up, just like I was saying 20 minutes ago. And we can get 3 or 4 guys who can lock up and we can figure the offense out. Maybe it's the opposite way. Go get dudes that can score the rock and shoot the ball, and we can teach them defense, and we'll find a good scheme to put around them. That's how I kind of look at it now. Like that in my brain.
Yeah. Like, for example, someone like, and this is probably a bad comparison, because you know what? I'll bring up this player, like Reed Shepherd, for example. Like Reed Shepherd, good shooter, freshman, so he's younger. I was going to use Dalton Connect, but he's a little older, so there's a little different. But Reed Shepherd, but you have to you would agree though, Reed Shepherd is limited physically. Like, you can teach him to be a good defender, but he's also 6'2", and he's not. There's certain things he just can't do. You know what I mean? Like, now, if Ron Holland 6'7", athletic, if he develops even closer a formidable jumper, it's like now you have someone who's very dangerous. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes defensively, some guys are just limited. They can't. They just can't. Like, Steph Curry will never be a good defender. He just won't.
But again, like coming into the league, he wasn't the best defender, but you've been able to, the Warriors were able to put him in positions to be better at defense, to where he wasn't a liability anymore to a certain point. But like, you're not going to go out there and find a shooter or a scorer like Steph. It's the same thing. Like, I look at like a Duncan Robinson with the Heat in his career. Like, he was never an elite defender at Michigan. But when he got to the league, what did he have to do? He had an elite shot. So the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra are like, How do we keep him on the floor? Let's teach him defense. Let's put him in the right positions. Let's figure out switches. Let's figure out on how can we put him in the best positions so we can keep him on the floor because he scores at a high level and could shoot. And like that's what they did, and he ended up being a starter for them and putting up minutes. And it's the same thing to me with a lot of players in the NBA, like Luka. I think Luka is such an easy fix, but say someone's an elite defender, you're not going to be able to teach them how to score the rock like Luka Doncic, but he scores the rock at such a high clip to where, okay, now we can figure out a way. Like we saw his liabilities on defense in the finals. All right, what do we need to do to teach him? It's easier for us just to teach him some defense and put him in the right positions than it would be to teach another player how to do what Luka does. That's how I look at it. Like,
yeah, Luka would be
defensively, it's easier to teach players and get players in the right positions than it is to say, go get us a bucket or go get us 20-something points a game.
I think Luka, and I get what you're saying. I think Luka is an extreme example.
Well, these are just normal. I'm trying to give different examples.
Yeah, and I get what you're going with. I get it. I do. I like Luka's like he's like a specimen. So like, yeah, I agree with that. But some guys like you brought up, even a Duncan Robinson or Steph, like they were hiding Steph or Duncan. They'd hide Duncan because those guys are just liabilities. But Steph, I'm willing to have him. I mean,
yes.
Steph. Like,
but to my point, it's easier to teach a guy defense than it is to become a shooter. Like that's just what it is. So when you're looking at drafting players, it's why wouldn't we draft a guy that's extremely offensively talented and then forge him into a defender? We can turn him into our own.
Yeah. It's 8:45, and I want to welcome in John Maakaron. So let's do that because we saw John today. Got to hang with him. He's teaching me a little bit about golf too. John's a vet.
He's a legend, man.
Well, John can do a little. He's a little Swiss Army knife. John can do a lot of things. Very gifted. So let's bring him on the program. Talk a lot of different things. Honestly, we have on our schedule today. But please welcome to the show the publisher of All Lions and the host of the Detroit Sports Podcast, Mr. John Maakaron. John, what's going on, my friend?
Fellas, what's going on? It was great seeing you out at Detroit Golf Club. The podcasters took over, man. It was a good time. Got our tan on, and we got to see some great golf. Man, what a way to spend a Thursday, man. It was a good time. Looking forward to talking some sports, too.
I mean, look at speaking of tan, I mean, what's going on over here? I mean, this guy, he's got burnt. I mean, Doc, did he look like this when we were at the Rocket Mortgage Classic? What happened? I didn't see him doing red. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where he actually looks a lot better in real life than he does on camera. It's crazy.
I love to hear that. The people needed to hear that. The people needed to hear that.
Sometimes it's the opposite, Boone. That's a good thing.
It's good to hear.
Well, Doc, before we got a lot of line. We'll get some line stuff. I want your thoughts on just how today went. We were at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. You are a golfer yourself. Would you make of the event? I know you've been going for quite some time there, but what got you into just attending the Rocket Mortgage Classic and covering it, obviously, and you've done a good job because you've spoken to some golfers, and hey, there's even some people that are maybe a fan of what the Lions are doing. But talk about today in the last couple of years for you.
Yeah, no, I love the game of golf, dude. It was great. I can remember the days when Greg Norman, choked away the Masters. I'm a fan of all competition. And when and it's really crazy in terms of the symbiotic relationship between golf and the mental aspect of the game and the way in which you got to just focus on the next shot. And everybody understands it. Even pros understand it, that they're going to hit a great drive, but then their next shot could be pushed off to the right. You got to stay mentally focused. And with covering the Lions, a lot of the Lions would participate in pro-ams. So you want to go where the Lions are. So it was real interesting. And when an opportunity presented itself to actually go cover golf, I said, hey, why not take an opportunity and learn how to cover it in a local situation? I actually I've saved a lot of tickets. Me and my brother-in-law, actually, back when the Buick Open was out at Warwick Hills, we walked with Tiger Woods. And it was great to see the fanfare around Tiger. And it was so great to see how much the fans loved the game of golf locally. It's big here in Metro Detroit. So you understand that a lot of people pay attention to it. But I love Tiger. It was great. But at the same time, we just love Fred Funk because he was just a regular guy, older, and all he did was hit it 240, 260 straight. And we loved that kind of game back then. And then when you have an opportunity to cover the game, when it was announced that Detroit Golf Club would host a tournament, why not go out there and see if an opportunity presented itself? And the great folks at Detroit Golf Club and those running the Rocket Mortgage Classic let me in and learn and cover it. And I just enjoy it because it's great to see the best of the best do something that you try and do, and they make it look easy. I mean, coming down the stretch, you recognize that Will Zalatoris and Ricky Fowler birdied the last couple holes. They're at 6 under, and it's an amazing opportunity to see, just how the best of the best perform at a course that I had a chance to play, and it's really unique. And Detroit Golf Club sets up well to scoring for the best golfers in the world. And when you get an up close look, hey, I was looking at the grips. How do they hit these 250-yard 3-woods off the turf and get it straight? And how do they maneuver the course? And there's always something you can learn from watching the best. And listen, anytime to see you guys out there and teach you and talk a little bit about the game and see just how far these guys actually drive the golf ball, and to see how competitors go out there and look, listen, if you have a chance to go out there, go out to the Detroit Golf Club. It's so open that you can see a lot. You have great vantage points, and the attendance this year might be down. So you might get an opportunity to have an up close look at the best golfers in the world handle business. And it's just a great time. And so for me, having an opportunity to cover a variety of sports, it just adds to the resume for sure. The DOC covering sports and, having an opportunity to talk to Ricky Fowler and the best golfers in the world, it's great. And having actually played the Detroit Golf Club, I hacked it up last year, and to see these guys shoot 66 and to see a 15-year-old out there is crazy to think about, that a 15-year-old starts the day off with a 300-yard bomb on number 10. And it's a fun time. Look, if you're a regular dude, you want to smoke a cigar, have some beers with your friends, Detroit Golf Club is a great venue. And there's a lot of atmosphere too. Coming down the stretch, it might be very competitive. There's nothing like it. And all I can say is last year, it was surreal being on the 18th green with a golfer, Ricky Fowler, having a putt to make for over $1 million. And he made it. The roar of the crowd, being there and just being part of something that's cool in the Detroit sports scene. I was glad to see you guys out there as well. And it's just fun to cover.
Doc, and by the way, Warwick Hills, great spot.
Yes.
I have one of my best friends lives on the course, so I've gone to the Senior Open, or with the Senior team
yes,
they have
yes.
out there now, the Ally Challenge. Great spot there. A little transition here. And by the way, too, the tournament is amazing. I'll second what John says. Again, I said it earlier. Make sure you guys go out there and check it out this weekend. But I want to ask about this Pistons team now, John. We talked about it today when we were walking out there. Trajan Langdon made the pick with Ron Holland. Where are you at with that? Because I have seen some of your tweets in regards to the pick and kind of your feelings on that. But have you kind of 24 hours later came around to the pick? I feel a little bit better now about it, being able to look a little bit more deeper into it. But where is your mindset on with this pick?
Yeah, it's just tough because look, it's a situation in which Trajan Langdon, and I think a lot of the Pistons fans are just so desperate to get this thing turned around, that a developmental player that needs work to shoot kind of wasn't on the docket. It wasn't something that people really want to sign up for. Now, his potential in 4 or 5 years, we don't know, because I was just looking up the stats here. If you pull up Kawhi Leonard's stats, his first 4 years in the league, he averaged 7.9, 11.9, 12.8, 16.5 before he became a regular, consistent 20-point scorer. And then the last, 7-8 years, he's been the Kawhi Leonard that people come to know in regards to being one of the top players in the game. So it's a project, and it just stinks because that's what the Tigers are doing. That's what the Wings have done. And now the Detroit Pistons are doing the same thing. They've hired somebody new, and he's going to try and tear it down and rebuild this thing for sustained success. That's why football is a little bit more fun to cover, because if you hit it right, within a year or two, you start to see momentum. And for the Pistons, if you follow me at Detroit Podcast, pull no punches. To me, the best, I think, safest way to look at it, and I think a lot of fans are doing that. They're so frustrated, so jaded regarding this franchise that they're taking a very, very skeptical approach that, hey, if anybody involved with the Pistons scouted a player, then they don't belong in the league. But I would say for those that are really, fans of the Pistons, I think that it's also safe to say that, look, Trajan Langdon's new. He's going to have to try and overcome the bad reputation. I mean, how damning is it that agents are calling and saying, hey, we ain't going to send players to work out. You got too many young players. There's no minutes for these guys. They don't want to come, and we're going to steer our guys maybe in a different direction. I mean, you don't hear that too often across the National Basketball Association. So for Holland, I think that, look, he's got freak athleticism, widely regarded as a player that was highly touted coming out of high school, got some work in the G League. And look, here's the part that sucks is that the draft kind of lived up to what I think people think is that this draft class really is not probably going to be littered with a bunch of talent. So for the Detroit Pistons, it's very important to be able to bring in coaches, a head coach, the new coaches that are going to be brought in to help develop these players. But does anybody have patience to wait 5 years down the road to see if he can develop a shot? I think I took the same stance that you did when I came in on and looked at what you guys were talking about yesterday. He doesn't shoot well. And I thought that, to me, it's a difference of philosophy. I would rather just take a player that's coming out of college a little bit more ready to perform now, because it's not wrong to bring in a guy that maybe doesn't have the same upside as Holland, but maybe can perform now to help get this team 25 wins. I mean, the team has gone backwards. So there's a lot of skepticism. Nobody knows what Holland is going to turn into. But when you look at it, Trajan Langdon is probably putting together a 5-6 year plan for this thing to start to turn around. And just nobody has patience for that. You're talking about 25 years waiting for stuff to go down. That's why it makes it so tough to be able to follow basketball, the slow grind of building a young team. And for Trajan Langdon, you took a chance. And look, for those that don't know about him, he's got a high ceiling. Everybody talks about his freak athleticism, can play defense right away, but he needs to develop a shot. But you brought in one of the best coaches that has been known to develop shooters. So, hey, you looked at now what's going on in terms of the second moves and the trade that they made today on day 2. You look at it, and Trajan has a plan. Do I trust it? No. Nobody in their right mind would trust the Pistons at this point in time. So my theory is I'm going to take a very skeptical approach. I have no trust in the Pistons whatsoever, but I'm open-minded that if Trajan Langdon can start over the next 2-3 years building back the rapport, building back the trust, then maybe you can be a little bit more positive and optimistic. But if you're optimistic, then you're just really being a fanboy. There's nothing to indicate when you look at the Pistons from top to bottom. I mean, they can't even start a press conference on time. I mean, Jared Goff chants are breaking off in the chat. You have people going, hey, wait a minute, your customers are waiting for you, and you can't figure out how to navigate Detroit traffic. So to start with that, and I look at it and I say, Trajan, you got work to do. Get after it and start to prove that you can understand how to build a roster with some talent.
No, Doc was speaking facts there, as always. But, Doc, you already talked about it a little bit earlier that you've seen some Lions golf and some Pro-Ams and whatnot. If Doc's building a scramble group, he's picking 3 Lions to golf with him. Who's Doc taking on the course?
Oh, that's great. Oh, man. Well, it wouldn't be Aiden Hutchinson because he's learning. And it was crazy. He's got the size. And you look at it and you say, man, he should be able to destroy the golf ball. But nope, he's still learning. And his appearance in the Pro-Am was a little rough. I look at it with the Lions, and we had an opportunity at All Lions today. We dropped it. Alex Anzalone. I had asked the writer to ask that same question to Alex Anzalone. And he said, look, you got to have first JMO, because he's probably going to be a guy that maybe will hit it 30 yards left, but will tell jokes and just make it fun. So first and foremost, Jamison Williams got to be in the scramble. Second, you probably got to have a good golfer. And I presume Jared Goff can get around, a natural athlete. Maybe Kristen Harper can be our caddy or be a support, can find our wayward balls.
You're a dog, Doc. You're a dog.
Some ulterior motives going on there.
Outside the box.
JMO, Jared Goff, and probably Amon-Ra St. Brown, because he probably is naturally athletic. Probably just give him one pointer and he'll start playing golf great. So you got to have one like Jamison Williams, who probably isn't that good. And then I think Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff would make it very fun as well. It'd be fun to golf with the Detroit Lions. I think a lot of shit talking would go down.
Yeah, no,
I'm going to stick with the Lions, Doc. I'm going to stick with the Lions here for this question. Me and Jeff talked about it last week a little bit. When you look at this schedule, you can look at the teams matchup. When you look at personnel matchups, I brought up it was Sam Laporta, Xavier McKinney, and then Terrion Arnold and Marvin Harrison, like the one-on-one matchups I could not wait to see. When you look at the schedule, who are you most excited to watch go head-to-head this year, personnel-wise?
Yeah, no doubt. I think that when you look at it, Green Bay has revamped their defense. I think in the division is going to be sick. When I look at it too, I just, there's some revenge games on the schedule that a lot of people are talking about. I want to see the Lions match up. I want to see J-Mo match up against some of the top defenders. I want to see. Now I think Dallas's defense is going to take a step back with their defensive coordinator heading off to take a head coaching job with Washington. But I want to see J-Mo match up against Dallas because their secondary had a bunch of interceptions and they're always opportunistic. I look at it and I say, with Jared Goff, I want to see how he faces off against some of the pressuring defenses. Again, the matchup that I have circled is going to be Houston. Does he survive Houston when they're going to bring the pressure with, I think, Danielle Hunter on that roster or
Danielle and Will Anderson.
Yes. The revamped defensive line and a defensive-minded coach that worked with Robert Saleh with San Francisco. How does that match up as well? So I can't wait to see it when you see the schedule. Lots of opportunities for the Lions offense to match up against some solid defenses. And two, this offseason, it's been weird because just because the Bears got the number 1 pick, they started flexing like they did something. They got Caleb Williams, but he's still unproven. But they got a nice secondary, so I want to see the Lions offense match up against the Bears. But they talked a lot of shit this offseason. Their fan base is like tripping out because the Lions are on top and they're just talking a mad amount of shit to Lions fans online. It's really unique when you look at it. And also too, when you look at it now, I had an opportunity on the last day before our little break. I asked the Lions safeties coach, hey, the wide receivers in the NFC North, it looks pretty stacked with Jefferson, and you got a lot of great receivers with the Packers, and you realize, wow, the offensive weaponry that's available in the NFC North is pretty stout. So I'm excited to see I want to see Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold match up against the receivers in the NFC North because it's time for them to prove that the secondary is going to be something that is going to be a strength. And Alex Anzalone said it, that they feel so much more comfortable kind of seeing what Davis and Arnold can do that it makes the defense so much better because the linebackers can get after it when they know that, hey, these corners can guard a little bit better in man-to-man. So we talk about some of that at All Lions. If you go check it out today, in fact, we talked about, I believe today or yesterday, how playing more man-to-man will help the linebackers and how Alex Anzalone feels about the defense. So I just can't wait to see the Lions cornerbacks against the receivers from the NFC North because the Bears I do see some talent offensively, but I think their biggest weakness is they got a rookie quarterback and an offensive line that hasn't been known to be all that great.
I'll ask you this too because I think this kind of ties into what you were talking about with Carlton Davis. I watched Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. They have a podcast, and one thing they discussed is ranking the NFC North secondaries. And Bucky Brooks had it: Bears 1, Packers 2, Lions 3, Vikings 4. So he had the Lions 3rd, and then Daniel Jeremiah had the Bears 1, Lions 2, Packers 3, Vikings 4. So they had the Packers and Lions switched. Where would you put the Lions in terms of their division, ranking their secondary this upcoming season?
Yeah, it's real interesting because Carlton Davis really has been a number 2 and now is kind of probably going to be tasked with taking on the number 1 role. But he's done some things. He's locked down some top receivers, including some in the NFC North. And that's where Dan Campbell came to see a player that they wanted to trade for. He saw what Carlton Davis was able to do against the Lions and the other opponents in the NFC North. So I would rank it probably Chicago 1, the Bears 2, and the Lions 3. But I think that that's at this point. But with the development of Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw down the road, I think they can get up there and perform and catch up pretty quickly. And still young. And that's the tough part is that, when you start to research, you can start to believe, okay, Terrion Arnold could have more impact than what we potentially believe at this point, but he's still going to face a steep learning curve. He's going to face quarterbacks that are going to look to exploit, certain matchups that are going to be difficult. And the cornerback spot is naturally challenging, but I think the Lions have the opportunity once they gel with Amik Robertson and Ennis Rakestraw When Rakestraw catches up to speed and gets a lot more experience, I think that you got a stout physical defender that can play man-to-man. So the Lions are starting off probably third in the division, but I think by the end of the year, I think if they stay healthy and develop and work with Deshae Townsend and Coach O'Neill with the safeties, I think they can catch up pretty quickly. It's all going to depend, in my opinion, on the development of Terrion Arnold. But when you look at what he brings to the table, you watch film and you see his anticipation, his footwork. You see a player that maybe will go through rookie learning pains the first quarter of the season, but by the time the bye week hits and beyond, you could be looking at a player that's going to contribute sooner rather than later. And one NFL writer that we wrote about said that, hey, could potentially be on the all-rookie team and is a candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So we'll see about Terrion Arnold, but I think the Lions secondary will have some things to prove to the fan base that wants to see, hey, you revamped the defense. Let's see what the secondary can do. Because right now it's all on paper, and everything on paper looks great. But when you go out there on the field, you got to go prove it. And the NFC North is no joke about it. You guys see it when you look at the offensive rosters.
Yeah, and Doc, too, I want to just we're about 3 or 4 weeks out now at training camp. Almost, I would say, maybe it's like the halfway point between training camp and OTAs. Maybe I'm a little off there by a couple weeks. But I just want to get from you here. I mentioned this to you today, actually, when we met at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, just kind of any bullet points or kind of thoughts on players to kind of keep an eye out for over the next couple of weeks, whether it's injuries or maybe even some trades or something to be made here for Brad Holmes heading into training camp. Is there anything that Lions fans need to kind of keep an eye on, any players or anything like that?
Yeah, no doubt. They still have, I believe, an open roster spot. You look at it right now, they may make one additional move. Could it be at safety? Could they bring in a veteran? A lot of people look at Justin Simmons. They love that name. A lot of people look at veterans that have played the safety position because of clearly Kirby Joseph's situation. But I think they got a lot of depth at safety. They have a player in Brandon Joseph I think you should all pay attention to. I thought he had a great spring. And I think that the player from Notre Dame, go watch some film on Brandon Joseph. I think he does a great job and has an opportunity. He caught the attention of the coaching staff. And he recognized that, a lot of the players that you want to pay attention to when camp rolls around are going to be the ones that were injured. I think that it's going to be key with Kevin Zeitler, who didn't participate a lot. Those that didn't participate, we have more questions about. DJ Reader, I thought, Ali McNeil had the quote of the spring when he said he sees destruction playing alongside DJ Reader. And if he can stay healthy, oh my goodness, that makes the defensive line all that much better and could be ferocious. So Marcus Davenport, a player that, you start to see off-season workouts and those videos, and you start to see what they're about. And obviously Amon-Ra and the offense always gets in there and shows videos. Terrion is not shy and likes to show workouts, but Marcus Davenport is, I think, a guy that, hey, if you hit on him, if he can stay healthy, then you now can answer some questions. Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer, who's great, and he's a great resource for me to be able to pick the brain of and read his work. And he's got all the coaches on the Rolodex, and you'll periodically see him message the Lions, and he's had a natural rapport with Dan Campbell the entire run of Campbell's time here in Detroit. And he said, look, pay attention to some pass rushers, maybe Ngakoue, maybe some individuals that potentially you want to shore up. And that's the biggest question mark. The biggest question mark heading into training camp is going to be who is going to be opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. We've talked about it, and I think that they have enough on the roster, but they still could go out there and look for another pass rusher out there who's a free agent. But at the same time, I think the roster is pretty good at this point heading into training camp, but the players you want to pay attention to are those that were injured, and you hope that, hey, the likes of the Davenport, Reader, and Kevin Zeitler, who didn't participate a lot in spring, you hope when we get our first look out there at training camp that they can be individuals that you say, okay, let's go, let's get after it when the season starts.
And Doc, we kind of talked about it a little bit over the months. Taylor Decker, obviously his extension keeps getting brought up. What do you think that extension would look like if we were to extend Taylor Decker?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have a couple offensive linemen that are developing, and most people kind of presume that Manu could potentially be the left tackle of the future. Still maybe an outside shot that they do move Penei Sewell back to his college position. He could literally play both sides pretty equally and would be dominant. It's an important position, Jared Goff's blind side. I think Taylor Decker does retire a Detroit Lion. I think that when you look at this season, it's going to be very vital that Taylor Decker continue to stay healthy. He had off-season surgery. I think he's a warrior. He represents everything that the Lions are about. And I think that he plays this year and maybe next year. Maybe you get that second year to kind of bring the cap number down. But I think you need him at a lower cost, maybe around the $14-15 million range if he accepts a little bit less money to stay. But if he's in that situation where he wants one last payday, maybe another team will take a chance and offer him more money. But I do think he wants to retire in Detroit. He said the talks have kind of started in terms of the framework. I think probably you're looking at maybe at the floor 2 years, $30 million. And I think it probably happens. Maybe it happens before training camp, but maybe not. When you look at it, the organization might want to see how he performs this year. But he had a decent year. He steadily is a guy that's getting older, and you understand that you do have to start to look to the future, but that position has been guarded pretty well. Jared Goff was held pretty clean last year. So you want to get as much out of Taylor Decker as possible. And it'll be good to see how, let's look at it, man. The guy plays on an injured ankle, injured foot. He's a gritty warrior. I think that, I think he's respectful, but at the same token, he doesn't like hearing his name in trade rumors. He never liked that. And he came out there and started to discuss it openly. I think he's underappreciated, but at the same token, if he wants to be in the neighborhood of where he's at now, it might be a cost-cutting situation where you go in a different direction. If Manu in the next 12 months can develop, maybe you get that confidence to move on. But I think that Taylor Decker retires a Detroit Lion. I think that he plays this year and next year and calls it a day.
And kind of going along with Decker, his main job is to protect Jared Goff. When Jared Goff just getting extended this year, where do you think has Jared said anything at OTAs, or do you think there's anything that Jared is specifically keying in on to improve this year and is going forward within his game?
Yeah, it's always asked about too. It's real interesting. And he was like, well, I can't, really break it down because it's all nerdy. But you always look at it, and he's always working on his game. I think if you look at some of the videos I share at Detroit Podcast, I think you see it. Footwork. You always want to make sure that you're properly with your mechanics fundamentally are aligned and making sure things are going okay. I think that for Jared Goff, I think that what the coaching staff said, which was great, is, and also too, which is really great, guys, too, is that we've kind of slowly spread out what the assistant coaches said, but they revealed a lot of interesting stuff in regards to Jared Goff and stuff like that. And I think Tanner Engstrand and the quarterback's coach, Mark Brunell, kind of referenced it. The decision when to pull the trigger on throwing it deep versus checking it down. The coaching staff is always going to want to make sure that Jared Goff, hey, if you see the lane and you see it open, pull the trigger, make it happen. And they want more explosive plays. And when you look at it, they still were tops of the league in explosive plays over 10 yards. But I think when you go back and review the film, I've started to do that over the last couple of weeks because, outside of talking to you guys or going out to cover golf, I like to watch film. I like to see what you can learn from last season. When you start to watch film, there's a couple plays that some receivers were open and he just didn't pull the trigger. If he just held the ball another nanosecond, I think that's what the Lions are looking at is, hey, we now have a better defense. Pull the trigger a little bit. Hey, take a chance with JMO. Throw the football. Try to execute a little bit more in terms of deep explosive plays, deep touchdowns. So I think that's going to be something to watch, how often he throws the ball over 30 yards when you have Jameson Williams now with a little bit more time under his belt. And for Jared Goff, I think that you start with a great foundation of keeping the football clean, not fumbling, not turning the ball over. But at the same token, I would not be surprised if he takes a couple more chances when you feel like you have a good defense that is truly bend, don't break, gives up field goals and not a lot of touchdowns. If the defense can shine, then I think Jared will be a lot more comfortable pulling the trigger. And you got $50 million, you got a lot of money guaranteed. Maybe maybe this year you start to see the true Jared Goff of old, where he's just flinging the football all down the field, and it will be great to see. But I think Jared Goff can even get better in regards to explosive deep passing and his connection. I think the number one thing you want to improve upon is, hey, target JMO, find JMO, get in rhythm as soon as possible, and make it so that JMO can be a star, and he's right there. So hopefully that connection can be just as good as it is with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't wait to see it. If it is, oh man, if JMO becomes a stud, look out. The Lions will be unstoppable.
Yeah, I watched Mina Kimes talk about this in her podcast, and it was super interesting because the Lions had, they were up there in explosive plays, but there was a number. It was like 60% of their explosive plays came from the ground. It was like, I think it was around that number. It was from the run game compared to other teams like the Chiefs or the Chargers, where like 70% of their explosive plays are coming through the air. So it's just, to your point there, JMO is kind of a big X factor with that. But I'll ask you this, John, to kind of go on training camp. And I thought this was an interesting question, which we'll probably get into one of these days. But what's one player that you think has the most to gain in training camp, and one player that you think has the most to lose in training camp? One of each, most to gain, most to lose.
Yeah, no doubt. You look at the roster, and I'm curious about some of the players on the roster that maybe are at that are competing for jobs. So I think you on offense, you kind of are pretty set in regards to things. I think players that you look at that has a lot to gain is Emmanuel Mosley. I think that if he comes in and is healthy, we haven't seen much of him. I think that he can earn some playing time and be a significant part of that defense towards the end of the year. But you look at a guy like that, and he's got a lot to prove, because I think that he's had a couple injuries that have been really severe, hasn't had a lot of time to work in this defense. And if he can be another added piece, I think he's got a lot to prove in this situation. You look at who has the most to lose. I think that, I think a lot of the jobs are pretty set. I think that the player that I think that is really high on himself, but still draws the ire of the coaching staff, is James Houston. I think he has a lot to lose if he kind of, veers off. And look, athletes have egos. It's natural. It's something that when you burst onto the scene and you get that many sacks in your rookie year, you're going to naturally think that you belong. Well, it's come year 2 and you get hurt and your momentum is clearly derailed. But the Lions want James Houston to be an every down defensive lineman, outside linebacker. And unfortunately, he's got the biggest trick in the game, which is being able to sack the quarterback. But at that same token, when you're able to do that, you maybe aren't as honing in on all the responsibilities. And the Lions' defensive scheme is complicated in regards to recognizing certain blitzes at certain times, the responsibility of where you need to be on certain routes, the ability to recognize certain routes and who's coming out of the backfield, where you need to be at certain times. And I think that James Houston still has a way to go to develop, but he's going to need to get in that spot. You guys saw some of the videos. He was on the outside. I think that he's going to have that opportunity, but I think that he wants to play more, but I'm not certain yet that the coaching staff trusts him enough. They say that, but the proof is still in the pudding that a guy like that has a lot of potential, but he needs to do more in regards to the little things. And I think that those are things where you got a guy with talent, but at the same time needs to do more. Is he willing to do that work when he probably knows if something happens and they move on from him, the entire league will come calling, and there will be one team that just says, hey, go sack the quarterback. Don't worry about all that other stuff. The Lions are more into, hey, developing a complete defensive lineman, a complete outside linebacker, do a lot of things. So a guy like that, I think, has a lot to lose if he doesn't deliver. And Aaron Glenn is not going to mess around. If he ain't happy, he's going to let everybody know about it. So we'll see how James Houston comes back. And also, too, I think a player that, is fighting for a job is Levi Onwuzurike. I think that he clearly knows that there's a lot of defensive linemen that could take his job. He has to prove that, hey, I can, when the pads come on, hit and get to the quarterback to keep his job, because you got Pascal there. You got others that are going to be battling. You got Betts fighting for a job. So Levi Onwuzurike, I think, is a player that I think is going to be on a lot of lists that you see that is a vet that could be cut. And, it's just unfortunate that, hey, it's a NFL, not for long. If you don't do the job, somebody else will come do it. So I'm curious to see how he does, because he kind of started to, if you say his stock, it started to rise in camp with being healthy from back surgery. So we'll see if he can sustain that success when camp rolls around.
Yeah, Doc, I want to ask you this too, real quick. I did see today on your guys' website there, SI spoke with someone there. I don't know if it was you specifically or someone there spoke with Alex Anzalone and did kind of an exclusive interview with him. And I thought it was interesting. One of the questions asked was about him and Kelvin Shepherd. saying, hey, I think he could become an all-pro linebacker this year. Klotzy's been pretty big on Anzo, and I know us as well as a whole as a show has been pretty big with Jack Campbell as well, taking a step forward this year. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the expectations for Jack, not just Jack Campbell, but also Anzalone, because he was a Pro Bowler alternate, basically just an alternate last year. But it felt like he was on his way before he kind of had that game or two where he was injured, potentially to being just a Pro Bowler in general without the alternate tag on it. Do you think he takes that step this year? And then even with that, kind of following that question, does Jack Campbell take the step with him? And then you just have an elite linebacking core here in Detroit for the future.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been great when you work with all Lions. You start to develop relationships. And the reporter, Justin Mello, he's great. And what he does is he's part of the draft network and also has the ability to freelance and put work on different sites. And I just came in contact with him just reading his work. He does a lot of college draft interviews, so he has some development where actually, if you read those interviews, the brands that the athletes work with will reach out to him, and he's developed that network that, hey, Anzalone, I think, is now pitching Campbell's soup with a lot of protein. So they reach out to Justin and they say, hey, we want to promote some items. Hey, we'll give you some time with some of these athletes. And he's great. And he's great working with him because he's somebody that understands, hey, I have some questions that I'd like to ask. And some of the questions I want are out there, and he does a great work. So I've been developing relationships with him because he's got the context. So I'm like, yeah, no problem. Put your work. If you got a Detroit-based article, don't go nowhere else. Come to me. And it's been great to be able to, with the work and the support of All Lions, to be able to kind of feature other people on the site. And Justin asked fun questions. And Alex Anzalone, Calvin Shepard said to him and publicly that he believes that Alex Anzalone can be an all-pro. His game is developed. He's good in coverage. I think that he's a solid tackler. And you look at, in terms of speed, maybe not the most swift linebacker out there in the world, but I think he does enough to be able to be a leader and made some plays. He came on, he emerged. He had a solid 2023 season, shut up a lot of critics. And I think he can be an all-pro. I think that the gist of kind of what you read on our site the last couple of days is with an improved secondary, the linebackers can play a lot better, a lot more free, not worrying so much about mistakes and not being so much caught up in, and Dan Campbell said it too, you don't have to be so rigid. You can kind of play a little bit more free to the football, get after it, and understand what you need to do. And I think the development of Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone, and Jack Campbell this year should be something that's talked about and will be monitored by us and by everybody who goes out to training camp. The linebackers, I think, can do a lot of things in regards to run stopping, causing, pressure to the quarterback, making sure that, intermediate routes are cut off with no more additional yards after the catch. So Anzalone, I think, definitely can be an all-pro, but he revealed an interesting nugget. When he was asked about, might be your last year with Aaron Glenn, he might have hinted too that it might be his last year too in Detroit. You never know if they count on Jack Campbell to do things to take his spot. He maybe just say, okay, I'm good. If the Lions win it, he might be somebody that hangs it up after a Super Bowl win, after a great career where he did get paid and can say, okay, Jack, take the job and handle business, and the Lions can get a little bit younger. But at the same token, Aaron Glenn might depart as well. So he kind of brought up both scenarios that, hey, nobody knows what the future will hold. But the linebackers are intriguing. If Derek Barnes can also be that outside rusher that can get to the quarterback, if he emerges and learns from the mistakes he made last year and delivers the big, nasty hit on Dak Prescott and jars the football loose, then if he makes more of those plays, you did see that interception that he made. He was around the football. And I thought the funniest part of that story was Derek's all into it. He's got the golf gear, he's got the clubs, but might not be good. So he said that he played, Alex Anzalone played golf with Derek Barnes in an outing just recently. So it's kind of fun when when you know that person that just gets all dressed up and gets all the gear, the hats, the fitted clubs, the nice shiny golf clubs, and then goes out there and hits it 5 yards. That
sounds like someone we know. Sounds like someone we know.
That might be Derek Barnes at this time, but he says he's getting a little bit better. So it's a fun interview. Go check it out. It's worthwhile at All Lions, and you can just check it out by typing in Detroit Detroit Lions SI, and you can find our content there. Or if you go to @Detroit Podcast on Twitter, all the links are out there. You can catch our content. It's fun. Alex Anzalone, I think, is one of those quiet locker room leaders that can be very much so a player that can, with improved play himself, can also lend some great credibility and some great production for this defense.
Yeah, relax, by the way, but continue.
That's fair. But Doc, we don't really talk too much baseball on this podcast, obviously, but I know you watch your fair share of baseball. I just wanted to get kind of your stance on the whole Tarek Skubal situation. Do you want to see the Tigers move on from him? Are you hoping that they keep him? And, obviously he could be a cornerstone player for this franchise. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, no doubt. The Tigers, again, part of that group of rebuilding teams. Look, I love watching Tarek Skubal. I had the blessing, and the Tigers have been really nice. They were one of the first organizations to let me cover the team and get out there. Still, though, with my prowess, they won't let me into the clubhouse that's reserved for the everyday people. They will not let me in there. I'm trying. I'm like, hey, it's been 5. You guys have let me come to the games 5, 6 years. What do I got to prove? I haven't flaunted what I'm about to them too much. I just go to the games. I can talk to the manager and I'm happy with that. But I'm like, I said to them directly, I'm like, what more do I got to do to show you? I want to be like everybody else. Like I even said to them, look, I can promise, I don't have to ask questions. I just want to understand what's being said and what's being asked in these, because they get a fair amount of time in the clubhouse. And I would like to be part of it, but they have not afforded me that opportunity yet, being part of a big platform like Sports Illustrated. But I accept what I get in terms of coverage. I thought Tarek Skubal is a prime example of what patience can afford you if you wait. Look, he's dominant. And I had the blessing of being able to sit in a doubleheader on a Wednesday, I think, and watch Skubal dominate in game 1 and Skeens dominate in game 2. I was like, this is great. This is pure baseball. And I've been covering the Tigers for a long time. Me and Vito actually did a baseball podcast for a while, but our schedule just got way too hectic with the Lions and we stopped doing it. Maybe it'll come back, but Vito is a guy that I lean towards. He loves baseball, actually goes out there quite a bit. And Vito is just obsessed with the Detroit Tigers. And I look at it like both sides. I personally look, if you get a top prospect from another organization, you need ball players, you need hitters. And I know the argument says, hey, if you get rid of a pitcher of that quality, you're still looking for it. But at this point, the Tigers are a below average baseball team that just needs a lot more talent. And unfortunately, here's the thing. Here's the tough part. And here's why I think the argument goes the other way. I think you just keep them. I think that it is so hard to determine if a prospect is going to develop in baseball. And you recognize the thing that the Tigers got to worry about is it's now more than just the average. It's not more than just luck. A lot of players that leave the Tigers play better somewhere else. The Castros are playing better. You recognize that something's going on with the coaching staff, and you got 3 hitting coaches that I think probably, if you dismiss them, probably you could upgrade, I think, the roster. And something that has to be looked at is the players that are on this roster that are tasked to develop, maybe they're not getting as good as possible. So it makes it tough to say, hey, let's bring on some young prospects and develop them, because the Tigers just haven't been known with under AJ Hinch to kind of develop players at the rate that you would think. Players leave and actually start to develop maybe a little bit better somewhere else. So I look at it like, okay, you keep Tarek Skubal, you build around him, and you just got to keep hoping that potentially Colt Keith stays on this track of development. You hope some of the players that are on this roster that are young that you count on can come in and hit. But man, it's infuriating when you watch the Tigers. You hit on Sunday and then you get 0 to 2 runs a game, and they're nowhere near contention at this point as constructed. And what's bothersome to me is a lot of mental errors. I mean, I thought the play that pissed me off the most, and I watch the Tigers, I like it. I am a FUBU. The blessing is I have the opportunity to have FUBU on my as a streaming platform as part of the Sports Mix, and I get to watch a healthy amount of baseball games. I like to watch all the Detroit teams, but you see a triple play with a base running mistake that is so egregious and so disturbing, the player still stays in the game. I mean, if I see that kind of level of ineptness, that player's sitting down instantly, and I'm going out there and I'm going to make an example of him. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I mean, that's something different when the ball is hit back to the pitcher, and you have no awareness of what's going on in the game, and you start to run home in a triple play. I thought that was the play that was the most infuriating of the year. And there's a lot of mistakes like that have been happening under AJ Hinch, and that goes to the manager, mental focus. And I just think that with everything going on, AJ Hinch is a great manager. You just got to get him more baseball players, and that's on Scott Harris. And it's great that he likes to talk to the team and likes to talk to MLB to be safe and insulated, but he's got to answer some questions here. Like, okay, it's your second year here. You didn't really upgrade the offense all that much, and you're starting to alienate your fan base because you're also an organization that hasn't been to the postseason in several years, and it doesn't appear that you're any closer. So you can't just say that you can trade Tariq Skubal and be better. So I'm of the opinion you keep them, you build around them, you support them, and you hope that, it just really stinks that the reason why the Tigers are in this situation, part of it is Casey Mize and Spencer Torkelson, two top guys, are not elite at this point, and that sets your franchise back when you have top picks and you don't have the fruits of that labor. So it just stinks too, because you recognize it's across the board. Not enough talent, not enough hitting, and not enough development from the coaching in terms of hitting. It's like, come on, you need to have these guys get to a better spot. And it's infuriating because you watch these games and it's a grind to see, a lot of these teams pass you by, and it sucks, like Texas, and you start to see Kansas City now, what they're doing. And it just stinks. And literally, I've said it before, I think the first move that would make everybody happy is you got an anchor in Javi Baez, like cut the dead weight, move the F on from a guy that just everybody sees as a dead weight. Start there, buy him out. You'll get at least a couple of weeks of good favor before everybody digs in to see what the true warts are. But Tariq Skubal, you got to keep him, man. The guy's a bulldog and an ultra competitor, man. I think he's, at his age, you got 4 more years of greatness from him. I think you can do some things, but you could also make the argument that the timeline with what you're seeing with these guys, it might not fit. So I wouldn't be surprised if, it'll be interesting. It's kind of like one of those deals where you got to offer him the money now, because if he keeps going like this, his salary demand might double in just 12 months from now, because of the fact that he could be someone that could command the biggest of the biggest contracts. So it's going to be interesting to see how Scott Harris handles it. But he's made some rookie mistakes in terms of how he handled Rodriguez and getting worked by a player. But let's see if at the trade deadline, does he kind of finesse some moves to at least help this baseball team, because man, it's frustrating as all hell to watch that team struggle day in and day out.
Doc, real quick, Jeff, I got a question for Doc. Little off topic here. This has to do though here with the Tigers, and you mentioned kind of the Tigers taking their time and the Pistons obviously taking their time to get back. I'm going to leave the Red Wings out of this because I think we all can agree the Red Wings are going to most likely, knock on wood, potentially Stevie Y gets them back to the playoffs next season. You're a game or two out of it last year.
Bye.
But what team here, what franchise, Pistons, Tigers, who do you think makes that jump and ends up turning this thing around first? Is it going to be the Pistons or is it going to be the Tigers? I know that both have been so bad for so long now. Do you think either one makes that jump soon?
I'll probably have grandkids by the time they do that, Doc. But what do you think?
Yeah, no doubt. I have more confidence in Steve Yzerman. I think the young players that are there in terms of Casper, the goaltender, I think you're maybe 2 years away from some of that belief of the sustained success. So the Wings, I think, are the organization behind the Lions that you should trust a little bit more, because there's a little bit more talent. And here's the thing, and it may not be as, the way in which I phrase it, but it does kind of sound weird that all the guys, Steve Yzerman, Scott Harris, Trajan Langdon, 6-year plans. These general managers kind of like to milk the rebuilds here. And I kind of wonder, on an extreme level, if you offered them $200K to get a winner next year, could they do it? I think all of them could. So the bullshit line that they all use is sustained success. Sports aren't kind of built like that, because what all these organizations are saying is the Lions want to be the Chiefs. The Tigers want to be the Dodgers or the Yankees. The Pistons want to be the Spurs. You're telling me that all this patience that you're asking of me is going to produce that? I have no trust in any of that. You know what I mean? Even with the Lions, I think that they're going to go for it this year, maybe next year, and then you got to tear it down. I mean, it's very rare that you're going to have, quote unquote, sustained success. it's bullshit. I mean, it's a bullshit line. I've said it on my Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. All these general managers, I think, are understanding that they sell this bullshit to owners. It takes time. It takes time. And I need my $2 million a year or $3 million a year every year for 6 years before I can get postseason success. It's like you're selling bullshit to people that will eat it. But guys like me and hopefully guys like you, as you get older, understand that sports is about winning now. And if you're going to start spilling that sustained success bullshit, then I'm going to need Trajan Langdon to win 2 titles. I'm going to need Yzerman to win a couple cups, because at this point, when you look at it, the frustrating part is, and I ask the chat, and I ask this a lot of time too, is it worth it to wait 16 years for 1 year of success? I mean, yeah, if it happens soon, but I think that length of time pisses you off so much that the win may not even, make up for the fact that we've been yelling and screaming and cussing for, 1,000 episodes on the podcast, waiting for this shit to get done. So I think that it's a situation in which these general managers and presidents have learned the code word to try and get patience. But I truly believe if you offer them, hey, you get $250,000 if you build me a playoff team and get deep success next year, they all could do it. And I just think this bullshit line of sustained success is such a way to deflect accountability that it just pisses a guy like me off, because I don't think it takes the Red Wings that long to get into the postseason and start to maneuver in a different kind of way. So I look at it like the same thing with the Tigers. I think that if you made a couple different moves at different spots, you might be further along. So sustained success, huh? All right. I think sustained success happens when you develop players at a high level and you get lucky. So if the Lions had, Patrick Mahomes, you can have sustained success. It doesn't work like that. That word sustained success, to me, to wrap that up, is a bullshit line that I think people try and use to try and hold off the anticipation of winning, because that's the name of the game. Win. You're charging people hard-earned money, and now it's not cheap. It costs, some people $60 to go see a day at the golf course. What the fuck? You know what I mean? And the cost is not coming down. So to me, I think that sustained success line, every time I read it and I hear it from these guys, it just pisses me off. Because as a competitor, if I told SI, I started at 2019. If I told them, I think it's going to be till 2024 until you get millions of views. Let me develop this thing over 6 seasons and they would have booted my ass so fast. They saw the fruits of my labor within 30 days of me joining. And it's a different thing with sports, but I'll say this, these 6-year rebuilds, I just think that there's a situation in which you alienate people and you take so much of their money. It's not as fun anymore to win when you wait that long. And we'll see one of them. I think the one that you can invest in, I think the Pistons, you can just discard and just move on. I think that, you think you're going to compete at the highest level in the NBA. I think that's tough. Just speaking as a fan, you can waste your time. You'll wait forever for the Pistons. I think the team that you can invest in and maybe get some return in the next couple years will be the Detroit Red Wings, because Yzerman understands it and he's done it before. The Tigers, again, you got to wait a long time, man, for these young arms to develop. The players that you got that are untouchables in the minors, you got to wait 3-4 more years. So at that point, like I said, it just takes a big toll to wait that long to win. And I just hope that, I think the team that is closest to sustained success, closest would be the Lions, because of the draft record of Brad Holmes. But to have consistent Super Bowl, you need the best. I think you need one of those elite quarterbacks to have that. You need a Mahomes. You need the class of one, special, unique, out of this world to be able to have that. But you can have, build a team and get there, but the league makes it so that with a cap that other teams will start taking your talent. So I think these general managers figured it out. Let's milk as much as we can. And if you're hired to be fired. If you can, sell 6 years and get $25 million, you're probably dumb not to do it, but it's annoying if you're a fan.
Yeah. And I get that point of view too. We do appreciate you, Doc. Again, you can check out Doc's stuff. What's up, Boone?
I said legend.
No, absolute legend. I had a blast with you today, Doc. Thanks for you showing me some pointers on the course. I do appreciate that, Doc. You can check out his stuff. Link is in the description. All Lions for all your Lions coverage, and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, where John has not missed an episode. He is a madman. He has yet to miss a week with us as well. He's Mr. Consistency. Until next week, Doc, we'll catch you then. We appreciate you, my friend.
No doubt, Huron Mark. Of course, I'm a lunatic. I'm a shit-talking podcaster who got lucky in sports, works hard, and they let my stupid ass cover sports in Detroit. And I love the invite and love the fact that you guys, I got a chance to meet you guys and tell some jokes and have a good time. I can't wait for next week. And I think you guys know what I'm going to tune into now. Let's see if that side of the craziness lives up to the billing. Let's see if the craziness happens. It's like a main event. Let's see what happens. Let's go. I can't wait for next week.
All right, there you go.
Bye, Doc.
Doc, lock it into the debate. Look at that, the Doc.
I am too. I got to go into my left. We don't got to talk about it, but it's just something. It's something to watch.
I've got a pause next to me at the very beginning, so as soon as the show's over, I'm turning over. I'm pressing play. I think we lost viewers because of the debate. Like we're competing with national.
The debate's gonna get more numbers than like any of the NBA finals, anything.
We went from 200 viewers to 70 since the debate started. I mean, I've never seen a drop off like that before in my life. And you guys got to think the show that I was on during football season, where I was competing against Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. I've never seen this before. This is insane.
Well,
we're pushing now, boys.
Let's get to this clip. This is Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah discussing their NFC North secondaries, where they have them ranked, and we're going to break it down. So let's play the clip. This is from their podcast on the NFL YouTube channel. Let's hear what they had to say about the Lions secondary.
NFC North.
Another tough conversation. And right now I have it Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota. Chicago, because you talk about Jalen Johnson being able to be a stud player. I am a believer in Kevin Byard in a system that allows him to be a see ball, get ball player. Matt Eberflus taking over, kind of doing some of those things. To me, it works out. And I'll say, keep an eye on Tyreek Stevenson. I kind of liked him when he was coming out. I think he's tough. He's physical. He plays to that brand, and on a team that is all about hustle and sweat equity, he is the worker bee that you prefer to have in the back end.
Yeah, I had the same one. I had the same four. I flipped 2 and 3. I had Detroit 2. I had Green Bay 3. Detroit, I mean, look, this is a young group in the secondary. When you talk about resources, they've put some resources in there. So they've done a nice job. They got a couple of my favorite corners in the draft. When you go to Missouri and Alabama and get 2 of the top corners in this draft class, that helps. So anxious to see how those rookies play. Kirby Joseph been a ball magnet early on. Brian Branch. They've got a lot of good young pieces that kind of all fit together. Carlton Davis now comes over. So they've tried to address this secondary here, both in the draft and in the veteran portion of the offseason.
And they had the line. Well, so Daniel Jeremiah had the Lions secondary second in the NFC North. Bucky Brooks had him third behind the Green Bay Packers. Which side are you guys on with how high you are in this Lions secondary, given what it was last year and kind of going into this upcoming season?
Klotz, I'll let you go first here with this one.
I think they're third. I think when you look at let's take out the Green Bay safeties. When you start at the corners, Jair Alexander, I think, is by far better than any corner that the Detroit Lions have. And it's not a knock at Carlton Davis, but when Jair Alexander is healthy, he's one of the best corners in football. And then you go to Eric Stokes, who's very slept on. He's a second-year player, maybe even third-year player, but another man-to-man guy that they have. And then you go to the safeties, and they just got Javon Bullard out of Georgia, who's a dog, and then they just bring in Xavier McKinney. So I don't really see with their starting four that they're going to have out there. There's really not that big of a weakness. To the Lions is not that big of a weakness, but I don't think they have that star power of a Jair Alexander. But when you talk about the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears, I think those are the clear 1 and 4, Bears obviously being the one.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bears is a no-brainer one with Jalen Johnson, with Jaquan Brisker, and I know you guys heard the name that, and then a lot of people I took flack for it when I drafted him in our NFC North defensive draft. But Tyreek Stevenson, I'm high on Tyreek Stevenson. I think he's a good corner.
I like when he can bring physical long corner.
Yeah, and he put up a lot of numbers last year, and he's an absolute he's one of those guys. He's an absolute dog too. And you guys know that's been my word the last 2 months is dog. I just want dogs on football teams. That's what football is about. Klotz, I get what you're saying with the 4, and I would like to know what you kind of feel about my side of things. Is when you do look at the secondary with the Packers and Lions, I think personally, like I don't want it to be like where it's a biased opinion, but like take that out of it. I think I would go Lions. Like if I was an outsider looking in, the only reason I say that is because, like you said, you have the Jair Alexander, you have Javon Bullard, Xavier McKinney, Eric Stokes. Like you have those guys. Those, like you said, it's a solid 4. But then when you get to the Lions, it feels like to me like Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Iffy Malfano, Amik Robertson, Ennis Rakestraw. Like you have like 7 guys there that you can like that. Yeah, some of them might not have played in the NFL yet, but if they end up working out, you have 7 dudes there that you can rotate through, and half of those guys can potentially be absolutely elite in the NFL. And then you still have that back half of guys. And that's where I look at like the depth of this secondary in the Detroit Lions. I think the depth of that room would put them over the Packers to me. But I do agree, like the Packers, like Jair Alexander, Javon Bullard, bringing him in from, like, he's a dog. We know him. Xavier McKinney, we already, like, you don't have to talk about him. And Eric, like, that's a good room. I just think with the depth of the Detroit Lions, I think there can be an argument to be made that secondary can get put in front of the Packers because of the depth. Now, if we're talking about just top 4 to top 4, yeah, you probably would go Packers because the Lions, like you would want to put Terrion in that top 4. He hasn't even played a snap in the NFL yet, so you don't know who he's going to be. And Carlton Davis, like I know we talked about it a lot. I feel like this is like Carlton Davis's like opportunity to where he had that Super Bowl run, maybe fell off just a little bit, and now this is like his like second wind of a career. Like you can really be something here in Detroit and have a really good season. So like I feel like that's that for Carlton. And like we know Brian Branch is going to be an all-pro, but like can Kirby kind of take that step forward, or Iffy? That's where I'm at with it. So top 4 potentially you could say the Packers, but I just think depth wise and especially the future and like the potential, I would have to go the Lions at 2.
I don't hate it because I think there's no way that I could argue outside of like Keyshawn Mixon, the Packers really have that much depth in the secondary whatsoever. But my thing is just with the top 4, like if you're asking me who's the top best secondaries in the NFL, I'm not really looking past that top 4. Now, can you put up an argument where you're talking about teams that are close in that upper end talent? Yes. And I agree to your point that in the future, it's without a doubt going to be the Lions. But just right now, it's really hard for me just to look past it because a lot of this Lions secondary is unproven. And I know that you have a rookie back there and with the safety room with Xavier McKinney, but Xavier McKinney, we talk about Brian Branch, those two are just copying clones of each other. So that's why it's really hard to make me move off of it because Brian Branch is usually that guy that makes me just tilt the meter a little bit towards the Lions. And when you have Xavier McKinney, I think as of right now, they play very similar. Brian Branch will be better, but it's just hard for me. But I agree with your point. Lions depth, they absolutely have more depth.
I'm gonna go Lions 2. I agree with Booner. I don't think it's like a big difference. I mean, if you want to go Green Bay, I don't hate it. The only reason why I would say the Lions is because of what Booner said. I think depth, I would give the nod to the Lions. I think Green Bay is the best number 1 corner. But Jair last year did have a bad year. Now it's not like him though. I mean, for his career,
and just the whole Joe Douglas was hell for them.
Yeah, and he didn't have. I think he allowed like 124 passer rating. But when you look at the last prior years, I mean, the numbers are ridiculous. I mean, he allowed like 66 pass rating the year prior to that. So you look at it as like a one-off. So I'm not mad at you for picking the Packers. I just think the depth of the Lions is something I would probably lean. That safety room, especially. I mean, they have multiple safeties that could start on every other rosters, except the best secondaries in the league. It'd probably be a little harder to do that, but I like their depth better. And the Packers, I mean, they have a rookie too, just like the Lions do. In the safety room, it's a little different. I get that, but I guess it's also my confidence in what Terrion Arnold can be. Like I think he'll be pretty solid this year.
And his Rakestraw
is always solid. They don't have a true like Jair-esque number 1 corner, but I think just in totality, just the secondary corner safety, I'm going to give it to the Lions. I know it's hard to think about because last year they were literally one of the worst secondaries. I think only besides Washington they were the worst. So I get that, but I'm going to give the nod to Detroit. But it's
I
not,
do think the
we all agree that
potential.
Chicago's 1 and Vikings are 4. We all agree there.
Yes, the Vikings room. I just go look at they don't have anyone. Byron
That's
Murphy,
not
Harrison
true.
Smith.
That's
Like
not true.
they have a couple guys, but they don't have names.
They'll
like
be
like
they,
Bears.
once they get like a legit dude.
Oh
They're
yeah, no.
Josh
Make it
Metellus, Cameron Bynum, those guys. They have like 2 or 3 guys in that secondary right now. Once they get a guy, they'll have some solid. They're Kirby. They're iffy. They have those guys there. They just don't have that Brian Branch yet.
Yeah, I'm not.
I know it's hard to see,
him.
but if you watch, especially the back half of last year when they kind of went on that little run, that defense was making plays for that offense, giving Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs short fields, and they have, especially in that safety room, they have some guys. I'm not saying Pro Bowlers, but they're definitely not laughing stocks.
So they're
not
a guy
one of the worst secondaries in the NFL.
A guy away on that defense.
Well,
brother.
they're a guy away from a guy away in the cornerback room. You say is that fair? They're about a guy.
I would
away
say
from a
that
guy
they're
away.
probably like, I'd give them like a top 20 secondary this year. Like, but it's not like we're acting like the Lions were the 31st.
The 31st, I think. Yeah.
So like let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like the Vikings secondary was much better than Lions secondary this year. Now Lions improved, but the Vikings with Brian Flores over there, Kevin O'Connell, they're going to bring in JJ. What does JJ need? A good defense. I trust that defense is going to improve.
Would love to see it.
Yeah,
sleep on them.
We'll keep an eye. We'll put a bookmark in that one. Let's keep an eye on that one.
Remember Cameron Bynum.
Would say, believe me later.
Believe me later.
Believe me later.
Cameron Bynum. Remember.
Don't forget the name.
Cameron Bynum. You have been talking about him for a while, man. Cameron Bynum.
How long has he been in the league?
He was on a tear at the end of the season last year. Like he was one of the better safeties in football.
I just want to look.
I'm looking at his stats right now. 137 total tackles. Not bad. Not bad.
No, he actually had a pretty good year.
Yeah, not bad.
He allowed a better passer rating. It's not. I'm just putting this. It's not the same.
No, I'm all ears.
Better
Go
passer
ahead.
rating
Just say it.
than
Don't have to explain it.
So he allowed a better pass rating, but he plays safety, so there's that too.
I am interested, Klotzy. I'll keep a bookmark in that. You know me. I love to hear Klotzy's thoughts on stuff like that. So I can't wait to see how that works out. I just like when you look at it just from the paper wise, you're like, Vikings probably could. They probably could get a little bit better on paper. Probably could.
Yeah,
now, if they're developing young guys, then okay, we can have that conversation. But they're not there yet. I'm more shocked, like just out of nowhere, you just like look at the Bears secondary and you're like, whoa. Like they have dudes, which is a little scary.
Like the thing though, like if I'm being honest, and I still like give them like the number one just because they have Brisker back there too, but Jalen Johnson's really the only dude they have. Like I'm sorry, Kevin Byard is not somebody that I'm like, oh no, they got Kevin Byard. Like if you,
I know, I think it's top to bottom though. Like they're like okay,
but that's where it's like I think the Lions have more depth than the Bears secondary. Like if something happens to Jalen Johnson, if something happens to Jalen Johnson, the Bears instantly go to the fourth, in my opinion. And I think if the Lions were to lose Carlton Davis, if the Lions were to lose Trajan Arnold, I think they're still swimming in the same tier.
I like their safeties though. I like Jaquan Brisker. I do. I like him. Kevin Byard's a little. Yeah, I get. I mean, based on
how do you like Tyreek Stevenson, Jeff?
I like him. I do. I like him.
He'll be like a really good cornerback too for them for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a solid pick by
Booner. Xavier Rhodes.
Draft. It was a solid
Walmart
pick.
Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah, Xavier Rhodes. I remember that.
Rhodes closed. Him and Harrison Smith.
Rhodes closed. That is
Anderson Sendejo. That was a name. Anderson Sendejo. You forgot about him.
I did. I did.
Captain Mutterland.
Jesus.
This was class. He just named like this dude's got an encyclopedia in his head. It's one of the more wild things.
I see Brandon. I don't know if this is Dallas. You guys just want to get off, work harder, and lock in. I'm the boss. I don't know who he's done. That was like out of context.
I don't know what that means. What is he?
That actually is funny. Tyler says, "Is Crunch Time going to get canceled for Booner red facing?" Solid question.
You guys have to. I wish there was a camera in my car when I was pulling into my my driveway, and I realized what my face looked like. I looked in the rear view mirror, and all my face, like it looks red here on camera. In person, it's like hot pink, like it's like pink. And I looked in the mirror, and I'm like, not good. And there was like 10 minutes until the show, and I'm like, this is not
This is
good.
a disaster, boys.
Yeah, this is an absolute disaster. I didn't know what to do. I went to the bathroom, put some water on my face, and it got worse. And I'm like, it just kept getting worse. So
Gotta put some aloe on it, Boone.
Yeah.
all right, I'll push through
Yeah.
it.
See,
Boys.
he ain't no burns, baby. We just
Well, you've been in the sun for the last 2 months. You know how some Italians work. Some Italians are a little more pale. Once I get burned once, it turns into a nice color. I just have to get that first layer down.
Yeah, the worst I ever got burnt was in Florida. I went with it was when I was a kid, and I was with my dad, and my dad's very like, we don't need sunscreen. Like we're out there, I'm like, I think we need sunscreen, Dad. And we're out there like on the beach, it's like 90 degrees, and my dad he doesn't wear any sunscreen. Like he's very tan. And we were out there for 8 hours, and I was probably like 10 years old and no sunscreen, dude. I'm burnt from head to toe. And he's like, shit. Well, I think my sister got sun poisoning. And he's like,
I can see your dad and your dad doing that. Oh, you don't need sunscreen.
I was like,
have you guys ever had sun poisoning?
No, not really. No, I've just gotten burnt really bad, and then it goes away.
She had sun poisoning, dude. It was so bad. Like she had to go to the hospital and get And by the way, I don't want. Hey, my dad, good guy. I don't want people thinking he's like this.
No, your dad's the dog, dude.
Oh,
He's
cool
the dog.
Yeah, it was a business decision. Yeah, she went to the hospital. She was fine, but yeah, it was. I was just burnt from head to toe. I didn't get any sun poisoning or anything like that.
And I'm sure
she was like swollen, dude. Like fucking.
As an Italian, though, the next day you're probably like a day later you're probably good. Like growing up, dude, I refused to use sunscreen, and we would go to Florida and everything, like going to Orlando or whatever, and I'm not using sunscreen. And I'd get burned, like I barely could sleep at night, and then like 24 hours later, just the way my skin is, it's just like it's like the burn's gone. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works, and then I'm just like start to get tan, and I never have to deal with it again. It's a wild series of events.
I only get burned when I go to when I go south. You know, if I go to Florida, if I'm out
those
there.
UVs, baby.
Yeah, the UVs kick in. Like I don't really get burned here, and I mean in Michigan, I don't really have too many unless I'm out there just cooking, laying out all day with no sunscreen. Maybe you get burned, but yeah. Dad with Tourette says, like Bandit, the dad from Bluey says, it was the 80s, man. Things are different, sub 90s even, but yeah, that was my dad. He was just like, "Hey, back in we didn't use no sunscreen. You just got outside. We went back.
Think you're hotter? You think you could beat the sun?
Yeah. You scared of the fucking sun?" I'm like, I don't know, Dad. I mean, we're fucking burnt. The worst is sleeping with it. That's the worst.
Oh, it's terrible.
100%.
The worst.
If you have it on your back.
Oh, the shower's bad too. Yeah, I would just peel, and then a couple days you're good. But yeah, it was.
I can imagine your dad. Oh my gosh, dude! Your dad just being like, "Don't need sunscreen. We're all good. Let's go."
Yeah.
That's so funny, dude.
And at that age, I'm like, okay, like I didn't know what. I just say, okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you right. I don't need it. I don't need it. You didn't raise a bitch. I don't need it. But yeah, that was a good show today. We appreciate the doc for joining the show. I know yesterday we had the drafts. We weren't able to talk to the doc, but next week we'll be back in his normal time on Wednesdays. But fellas, we'll have a Friday show tomorrow. We appreciate all of you, even the people that didn't are going to watch the later time because of the debate. We understand.
What a battle we just went through. We're at 56 people. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I get it. People have America's futures in question, so people need to watch
Very
this
much in question.
So I understand. I do. I had no fault at all. Tyler, Crazy Clown, Dad with Tourette's, all you guys in the chat.
Appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you. ETN, Ubaldo, Big M, Brandon, Allen, who I think left, Silent, ECL, Bonjay, Certified Supply Chain Professional, all you guys here on Mark. Even Coach. I think Coach probably is locked in. Actually. Well, yeah. But we'll catch you guys tomorrow, man. Have a safe night. Enjoy the debate. We'll catch you back tomorrow, 8:00 sharp. Until then, we'll see you. Deuces.